So welcome back to another video, my friends, and in this video we'll be taking a look at the useEffect hook inside of React. Now this hook might be a bit hard for some people, but it's not really hard. It's just a matter of understanding something, right? So let me explain. First of all, the useEffect hook is used to fire something, to fire a function to do something when a component first loads up. So that means when a component, let's say the app component that I have, when it first loads up, okay, then I have to do something, then I want to do something. That's why the useEffect hook is being used. So let's just take an example of how it works, and we are also gonna fetch some data from an API, and we'll use the useEffect hook. So I just have a simple header, okay, that I have inside of my app, and as you can see I just have the title React useEffect hook explain, nothing much, right? So first of all, what you need to do is, I'm in the app component and I'm not going to just I'm not going to mess with the header component because it's just a title, right? So I can just go to my app.js again, and now what I'm going to do is import. First of all, let me just import it up there. So we'll import something from React, right? And that something is going to be the useEffect hook, and you'll get the autocomplete for sure. If I press Control space, I'll get the autocomplete. As you can see, useEffect. Now this is what we are going to use. Now useEffect is a hook, and a hook is simply a function, right? So if I call useEffect right over here, now when I call useEffect, I first need to pass in the effect. It takes two arguments, effect and the dependency array. So first of all, the effect is going to be a function and the dependency array is going to be an array, right? So this function, let me just zoom in. So let's simply console.log in this function in the effect, okay, just so we can understand. Now right now I am passing in an empty array, okay, and this is also optional. If I don't want to pass in, let's just not pass in. Now this function inside of the useEffect, this effect will run whenever the component re-renders. That means whenever the state changes of the state of the component changes, the component will re-render, right, to show the effect. And that's when this useEffect will also, and if you don't pass in the dependency array, let me show you an example. Inside of here, let's just open up the console. I'm sorry. So in the console, I can see in the effect, because the component first mounts, right, the component renders at first. If I refresh, I'm going to get the same in the effect thing, but let's have some state now. So I'm quickly going to import use state, and I'm quickly going to add some state. So let me just do that, and let me just make it 0, and this is going to be counter, and let me just say it's the count, okay, count and set count. And let's create a button down there that will actually update, okay, and on click. Now I hope you know the basic React now, and set the count to count plus 1. Okay, so I'm just updating the count variable, and let's output an h2 tag with the count variable. So here we go. So this is a simple counter. It's going to refresh, okay. So as you can see, we have the, wait a minute, so we have the counter here, right here, okay, it's 0 and update. So let me just center it first of all. Okay, then what I did is I just added a div, and then I just set the text align center, okay. So now everything is centered. Now we have the counter right here, and as you can see, at first in the effect is going to output, right? Now whenever the state will change, so whenever the state is going to change, that means the count or whatever state you have, the component will re-render to reflect those changes, right? The virtual DOM. And in that case, if you don't pass in a dependency array, so that means whenever the state changes, it's just going to run the effect. Now as you can see, if I just click this button, you'll see in the effect again. So as you can see, so the same code, the same function is going to run whenever your state changes. Now this might be helpful in your case sometimes, or sometimes not. That's your wish. Okay, so now let's clear the console, and now let's see the example of a dependency array. Now if I pass in an empty array, okay, this thing denotes that whenever I now this function is going to get called, let me just refresh. So this function will be called only in the beginning, only when the component first mounts, and then it's just not going to get called. So that means I can see in the effect here. Now if I just click on anything, if I do, I mean, it doesn't matter what I do on the page, it will be called only once in the effect. And so we have the count and set count, right? But now what if I pass in something right here in the dependency array? I can pass in something, for example, count. So when the count updates, it's going to rerun this function. So for example, let's just output some template strings. Let me just make this, and in the effect count is, and then I can just output the count variable. Now as you can see, I'm outputting the count variable, and now let's refresh. So at first it's going to run, okay, and the count is 0. So I have in the dependency array, whatever you pass in, when the state changes, it's going to rerun this function. So count is 0. Now when I click update, it's going to change the count, it's going to set the count, and that's when this function is going to rerun. So 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, as you can see the changes on your side. Now that's the 3 ways of useEffect running, and how this can be useful to you. Now let's take a look at a real world example. So I'm just going to delete everything I have, including the state, and let's just get rid of both of these things as well. Okay, save that, and we won't have anything. Now let's just go to Json Placeholder. Now Json Placeholder is just a fake REST API which you can use when you want to just test something. So right here they have given an example to try it, so I can just copy this. So this is for to-dos. They have a lot of data, fake data, and now I'm fetching data, right? So I want to fetch the data once the component is mounted, once the component is rendered. Okay, so what I can do is I can just run the useEffect. I can pass in a function in there, and in the dependency array I can pass in an empty array, because there is nothing which will update and then I have to update the the data again. Okay, so I can just paste that in. So that's gonna fetch something from Json Placeholder, and then response.json, and then JSON is going to console log. But instead of console logging, let's just have some state. So const data and set data is equal to use state, and let's take a look again at, if I run the script, we are going to get an object. Okay, we are going to get only one user, so it's going to be an object. So I can pass in an object inside of use state, the default thing, and then I can just pass in set data to the JSON that we get, right? Hit save, and we won't see anything on the page because we are not putting anything, right? So let's just do something. Now in here I'm just going to output data. Now if you take a look at the page again, I have in the data if you can see properly, I have the user ID, the ID, title, and completed. So let's just output the title. So I can just get data dot, I can access it by data dot title, and let's go back and let's just refresh. So as you can see, I have the title, so that works. Right now what happens is, the process is that when we refresh and when the component mounts at first, it's going to fetch the data when the component mounts, okay, at first. And let's do something else, like let's try something else. We have the posts, comments, and can I get a random one? So we have a number of to-dos here. So let's just copy this endpoint, the to-dos endpoint, and let's just get all of the to-dos, right? So I can just replace this with the to-dos, and in the state, now this time it's going to be an array. As you can see, this time it's going to be an array. So in that case, let's just change this object literals to an array, and inside of here where we say data dot title, it's actually going to be data dot map. Now these are the basics of React, and this is not what I'm going to explain you. Okay, so I can get the to do, an individual to do, and for each to do I'll return nh2, right, with the to do dot title. Okay, now what's gonna happen is, simply, as you can see, there are a lot of things. Now this is just a warning for each, but we won't be messing with this right now, so we don't need to worry about this. So as you can see, let's just make this h2, let's just transform this to a p tag so that it shouldn't be that large. So now as you can see, I have some random to-dos text right over here. Okay, so what happens is, whenever we reload and whenever the component mounts, it's going to fetch the data and then show it to you. Now that happens when you pass in an empty array in the dependency array, but if you pass in nothing, let's just save and let's create another state, the count state that we did, okay, earlier. Set count, that would be equal to use state 0 in the beginning. Now I have set up a basic on click event on the I have set up a button and then an on click event. So when you click this, it's going to rerun the use effect and it's going to refetch the data. So if I click update, you don't see the change, but let's just see if I change this. So let me just make a simple if check. So if the count is not equal to 0, okay, in that case we are not going to fetch the to-dos. Let me just duplicate this. So in that case we'll fetch the posts, right, and else we'll fetch the to-dos. So first of all, it's going to check if the count is not equal to 0, okay, and that is false, so it's not going to fetch the post, it's going to fetch the to-dos. Okay, so let's just refresh. Now as you can see, it first fetches the to-dos, right? Now if I click update, the count is going to go up, and when the count goes up, it's going to rerun the use effect, right? Hear me out loud. It's going to rerun the use effect, and when it reruns the use effect, it's going to again check if the count is not equal to 0, and that will be the case, and that's when it's going to fetch the post. Now when we click update, as you can see, everything changed. That's because the count was not 0 at that time, and then right now it's to-dos. If I click update, it's going to fetch the post. And then if you pass something inside of here, some specific elements in the dependency array, that whenever this will update, then only I want to run this use effect, and that will also work. So that will do the same thing right now, because we just have one state variable and it's fetching the to-dos. If I just hit update, it's going to fetch the posts. So I hope this explanation was helpful to you, and be sure to like and subscribe if you like this video. Comment down below your doubts, your suggestions, your feedback about me and this channel. And finally, thanks for watching.